Hi, my name is Marsha Metzger, and I'm with Parents on the Level. I'm here to talk with you today about social and emotional learning, and my presentation is titled The Show and Tell of SEL 15 Plus Harmful Elements. So, we all know the American school system is full of acronyms, and SEL stands for social and emotional learning. All right, so let's get going here. I want to give you a quote that perfectly describes SEL. Who said this? This is a court case, okay? Schools exert great coercive power over children who are uniquely susceptible and particularly vulnerable because of their emulation of teachers and peer pressure. Defendants have taken advantage of this susceptibility and vulnerability to willfully impose their own social, political, and psychological ideology and agenda to shape and control student attitudes, beliefs, and behavior relating to, inter alia, human sexuality, equal rights, and the relationship between a parent and his or her child. Let that sink in just for a second. This was said by Justice Sonia Sotomayor. She was dissenting in the Kennedy versus Bremerton School District case, where Coach Kennedy was let go for simply praying on the 50-yard line after a uh, football game. And anyway, this was dismissed against him, and I think he was fully restored or whatever. But anyway, he won the case. So when you think about what she just said, in her dissent, it's very interesting because this describes everything about this quote describes what's taking place in social and emotional learning. And the thing is, peer pressure is one of the main tools that is used in social and emotional learning's 5 competencies. So we'll explain that later on. But this pretty much, I would just do a screenshot of this to start with because this is very interesting and very telling. I got a couple of more things to warm you up to get you to understand how SEL works. So let's keep going. SEL is an overall digital framework. So it just lays over everything during the school day. Teachers mostly think SEL is mostly helpful. A lot of teachers think parents aren't teaching kids how to behave anymore. And, there is some truth to that. And there's also some social contagion to other kids that are taught at home. So we know that's the case too. So, anyway, social and emotional learning, anything to help with behavior, is usually welcomed by a teacher. So, now here's another quote. Let's talk about this one real quick. Every collectivist revolution rides in on a Trojan horse of emergency. It was the tactic of Lenin, Hitler, and Mussolini in the collectivist sweep over a dozen minor countries of Europe. It was the cry of men striving to get on horseback. An emergency became the justification of the subsequent steps. This technique of creating emergency is the greatest achievement that demagoguery attains. This was said by Herbert Hoover, our 31st president. So, demagoguery is a very interesting word today. It is a political activity or its practices that seek support by appealing to the social, my word, prejudices, and emotional, also my word, desires of ordinary people rather than by using rational argument, which are facts and reality. So it's getting people worked up in their emotions, right? It's the social and emotional status over the facts and reality. Okay. So this would be the way that you could manipulate or indoctrinate someone, right? Okay. So keep going with me. COVID-19 was that emergency in the schools. This is when everyone got on the laptops. This is when everyone was really just supplying that data to the schools, okay? Coupled with suicide, teen suicide, and mental health issues, they could really, really sell to the teachers, right? All right, we're selling SEL. This Trojan horse rolled into the schools with ESSER funding to the tune of billions of dollars for schools, ed tech, and publishers. So ESSER funding stands for Elementary Secondary School Emergency Relief, or COVID money might be a better way of saying that. SEL publishers were projected to make $3.8 billion by 2025. And a 25% compounded annual growth rate doesn't hurt anything, right? They can already bill to Medicaid. The counselors can already do that. So if your kid's on Medicaid, they're getting extra interventions, most likely. I'll explain a little more of that later on. Plus, if they can sell your kid by giving them affirming care, and they buy the transgendering issues, I mean, there's a lot of money to be made there in the medical industrial complex. Big Pharma makes a chunk of money on the meds. You see that? A lot of money to be made in our schools today. You know, we used to go to school, our kids had a locker. They had books that were kept for a few years. Do you remember the front cover of your book where your name was written in there and you could see upperclassmen that had that book before? Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore, most likely. Yeah, everything's digital now, and it costs you a lot more money than you ever wanted to pay. All right, so that's what's going on, lots of money. I also like to use kudzu. Kudzu is a great way to describe how SEL chokes the daylights out of a school while everyone's in agreement with it because they think, well, the kids need this, right? So it's easy to sell, but you don't know what's happening in the background many times. Kudzu is an invasive weed or vine that was brought here from another country, okay, in the name of erosion control, an emergency, remember? So it grows 1 foot a day. It smothers vegetation, gains 120,000 acres a year. For every 2.5 acres, it costs $5,000 to maintain it. Yeah, it's crazy. Just like SEL, it's far reaching, it's taking over, it's hard to remove, and it needs to be pulled out at the grassroots level in your local school. Yeah, this happens at the local level. It's not going to be a top-down legislative thing at all. You're going to have to stand against it in your schools. And just like kudzu, SEL can literally take over your home, your life, and steal your peace if they transform your child's mind using cultural Marxism, because it's the divide and conquer thing that SEL is great at. Remember the demagoguery comment? So if SEL was pasta, how would it be served? Oh, the possibilities. Look at all of these different names on these little pasta elements that I have here for you. Any of these things can captivate the mind of a child, and whichever one will stick and hit your kid, well, when it's done, it's going to stick to the wall, right? If you some people do that. I don't throw spaghetti at the wall to see if it's done myself, but just to go along with the little illustration, which type of pasta do you think is going to stick to the heart, the heart wall of your child? This is what they're looking for. And then there's an intervention for that. Let me show you one of the kids that has been fully transformed underneath your nose that possibly this family didn't know about. This particular video I'm about to show you happened in South Carolina. All right, let's go.
Chapin High School in my senior year, and I've attended schools in the Chapin cluster since kindergarten. This is the first District 5 board meeting I have attended, though I did watch the public participation portion of the meeting that took place on January 8th. I was inspired to come and speak today by my English teachers. In my high school years, I have come to know most of the teachers in the department and found that they are a brilliant and kind group of people who truly do act in the interest of every student. I hold the utmost respect for them, and they have taught me so much in academics, extracurriculars, and lifelong ethics. I am incapable of fully understanding the stress and responsibility felt by teachers, parents, and the members of this board. I have no years of experience being an educator. I have no college degree. I'm not a parent. I'm barely even an adult. I'm just a high school student. I'm here to make a point about the dangerous consequences of book banning in public education, but I first want to share some of my background so that you may get an idea of why this is so important to me. I'm fortunate to have both my parents present and involved in my everyday life. They support me, care for me, and I live a comfortable life. I love both of my parents dearly, but tonight I would like to focus on my father and the concomitantly detrimental effect he has had on my life. He is a conservative, a Republican, and a Christian. For as long as I can remember, he has instilled his political and religious values in me. As a child who unquestioningly admired her father, I took him at his word, and his one-sided bigoted beliefs became ingrained in my identity. When the topic of the 2016 presidential election arose at the fourth grade lunch table, I would recite the arguments my father made in favor of Trump. I ignorantly endorsed a man who would have me suffer and even die in the name of political agendas. At 10 years old, I had no one exposing me to diverse political perspectives. One might argue that a fourth grade classroom is not the place for political discussions, and if one is to arise, the teacher should extricate themselves from the situation and dismiss the topic entirely. If the classroom is not the place for such discussions, then where? The home. My parents failed me in that area of education, and I can assure you that mine were not the only ones. If fourth grade students are old enough to hold conversations about politics and current events themselves, then they are old enough to hear debates that represent both sides and incorporate a variety of viewpoints. I have since needed to reconsider where I stand. When the Democrats, who had previously been demonized, held in unjustifiable condemnation and immediately dismissed, actually aligned with my own morals and reasoning more than Republicans, I found myself at a crossroads. I could either continue in my father's doctrine that required me to follow blindly and ignore irrefutable truths and the principles of democracy, or to pursue my own knowledge and form my own opinions. This I could not do without the support of my teachers. They have encouraged me to conduct my own research about the politicians from both parties who have the power to dictate my life. They did this without interjecting their own opinions or political affiliations. They have emboldened me to form my own opinions and supported me unconditionally. The English department has changed my life for the better. They are, in my humble opinion, the most qualified people in this room to determine which books are useful and appropriate for classrooms. They are experts in how to best use these books, these tools, to provide students with a diverse education with which to become well-informed, free-thinking citizens. Thank you.
There's your transformed child, parents. How does that sound to you? She says so much in this. And I mean, this is over books that really aren't banned. They might be restricted from some schools because of the content, but they're really not banned. If they're banned, you can't even sell them. So there's so much that I could break down in this, but I'm just sitting here showing you this is the transformation I'm talking about. There were so many things that were said in here that you could go back and listen to, and you can just see it. Some of this pasta stuck to her heart. All right, let's look at another one. This child is from Georgia. Let's look at this real quick.
At Columbia, when Jewish students were engaged in displaying the American flag and the Israeli flag, another student wearing a mask because these protesters are oh so brave, they almost always cover their face, held up a handwritten sign saying Al-Qassam's next target. Al-Qassam is the military arm of Hamas. According to social media, this particular student is a wealthy student from Georgia. She's not Palestinian, but she has been taught lies and hatred, and she feels perfectly comfortable advocating the murder of her fellow students at Columbia. At MIT, students have reported they feel unsafe to go to class.
She's been taught from lies. Columbia is one of the main universities where SEL came from. A lot of it propagates exactly from this school and from some of the leadership that has come through that school. So that's something that you can learn on my website, parentsonthelevel.com. If you'll go through my Castle series, you can learn all about how all of this information works. But today, I'm just pretty much sticking to an overall, talk about this. There's so much to SEL. You have to have a time investment to really learn how it works. So that's what I hope that you'll be able to invest in as you look at these things with me today. So the programs, SEL programs and integrations, they're mostly digital. They can introduce students individually to concepts that parents would find deeply problematic. They're introduced a little at a time with normalizing concepts. Most of the time they come through interventions. Most of the time they come through the American School Counselor Association member. So it's one of the school counselors. By the way, they're no longer just counselors, guidance counselors. No, they're mental health counselors that are looking at your kids now. And every kid in the American school system now pretty much is looked, they're pretty much analyzed by mental health counselors and even psychologists to see what kind of data your kid's producing in these programs. So while not all teachers or schools are practicing methods to transform kids, because a lot of teachers will scream, we're not teaching this stuff. Maybe they're not, but maybe another one is. And they're in different schools, and there's just a matter of working them out. And the systems are in place for this to take over. So if they were told they have to do it and they don't want to do it, these teachers, well, there's someone else that'll come right behind them and do it, and the systems are in place. So all of these personalized one-on-one interventions are arranged to get that one piece of proverbial pasta to stick to the heart, representing any marginalized or diverse status that can be used to transform the worldview of your child through weaponized empathy or by victimization. Counselors and social workers oversee many of the interventions, and most counselors are associated, like I said, with the American School Counselor Association. So here's a couple of clips to help you understand their worldview.
That circle that we mentioned earlier, anti-racism starts with us. Dr. Damian Sweeney, one of the authors, is here. So with that, it really looks at how are we what are we doing to take care of ourselves in this process? Because it's exhausting and it's draining, right? Raise your hands. Resistance. Changing systems work is draining and it takes time and energy. So what are we doing to team with other people in that process to keep our energy up? How are we being aware of ourselves? And then how are we able, this whole concept of working smarter, not harder, that politics. Like I love work by Dr. Rebecca Pianta, Dr. Caroline Lopez Perry. They are brilliant. They're out of California. They are brilliant talking about politics. How can we influence the system? So politics, being savvy, like how are decisions made, who makes decisions, and how to navigate that system. Dr. Natalie Edelman-Asinga says school counselors are the best master manipulators. And the best way, right? How do we look at systems and how can we maneuver them and change them? And that helps over the work with resistance. So it's like...
So these counselors are trained in the work of resistance. And what are they resisting? They're resisting the current structures. Let's look at another one real quick. Master manipulators, remember that.
Thank you. And we do have a few more minutes to answer a few more questions. The next question, great. What should we do when a student asks to be called by an affirmed name, but their parent insists that they be called by their given name?
Yeah, this is definitely not fun. I will admit this is the most unfun part of being supportive, caring, loving school counselors because the parents will be mad and it's not fun and it takes thick skin, unfortunately. And hopefully you have support of your administrators, but if you don't, it can feel very, very lonesome. So if you don't have support of your administrators, find another school counselor. I mean, call me if you need to. Seriously, call me, email me. Find somebody who can support you. And that could either be one of the advocates from GLAD, the legal advocates that I told you worked on my policy with me, or it can be someone from your state school counseling association or from your state LGBTQ organization. But it's just important that I always stress, I understand you don't support this, but it is our job to support your kid in school. Like that is point blank our job. Your job is to support them at home. It's our job when they're with us for those 7 or 8 hours. We have to legally make school a safe space. And if your student, if your child, parent, if your child is telling us, I feel safe in school, to feel safe in school, I need you to call me this name. We have to do that. It's best practice.
That
it's also, I mean,
true.
A student can file a Title IX discrimination thing. I mean, that is a thing.
Still.
Young kids probably don't know they can do that, but I mean, teenagers definitely are aware that Title IX exists and they can file a Title IX discrimination complaint against you. And that is not fun. And it involves an investigation from a third party. I mean, every district, I believe, has a Title IX coordinator.
This was taught in
that you
2022.
can take any sort of discrimination complaint. I mean, a sex discrimination complaint, a race discrimination complaint. Kids can do that. And we don't want to go down that route. It's not fun at all. But I just think it's very important to listen to the parent. It's easy to get frustrated with them. Absolutely, I get that. But just to say, parent, I really appreciate this conversation. I'm glad you're talking to me about it. but I need you to know that your child has asked me to do this, and we are going to do that. And I mean, I even had a parent then try to talk to my principal about it, and my principal was like, here's the policy. It says, I mean, if you do have a policy, it does back you up a little bit, other than just, I'm a school counselor who does best practices and I care about your kid. I mean, if you have a policy that can help you, but if not, it's just, thank you for talking to me. I really want to keep talking to you about this, but it's our job to keep your kids safe, and this is what they're asking us to do so they can feel safe with us, and that's what we are going to honor.
Isn't that interesting? Folks, the American School Counselor Association member is one of the most dangerous people in your school. Just point blank, especially if they go to their annual meetings. One of the people that does a lot of the same kind of work that I do, he went to this particular event. He got these videos when he was there, and he recorded them and he shared with people. He's like, this isn't right, because it's not. And when you're training these children like this is why you get a daughter going to a school board meeting like you saw a few minutes ago, totally lambasting her father. So this is where this comes from. So let's look at a little bit more. You know, the last person, or the last video, I'm sorry, that I just had, talked about resistance and talked about politics and how they can change things, how they can change systems, how they can be savvy, and how counselors are the best master manipulators. It's the truth. So this is how they're teaching this. After he did this expose on these people, they firewalled their videos where only members can see their stuff now. But if you have a school counselor that is a member of ASCA, American School Counselor Association, you can better bet yourself they're learning this, and this is how they are reading the data, and this is how they are grading your student, and this is very dangerous for your family. Watch this one, because this one will mention school counselors as well.
I am Sage's mother, better known as Nana. I adopted Sage after my son died when she was still a baby. She's been through 6 foster homes by then, but we loved her, and she blossomed into a joyful, lively girl who made music and art. Puberty began and COVID hit, and she was treated for depression and anxiety, at times very severe. Her teachers shared any concerns with me so her treatment could be adapted. The transparency ended in August of 2021 when Sage started high school. She started a public high school, and she told me that all the girls there were bi, trans, lesbian, emo, and she wanted to wear boys' clothes and be emo. Because I saw it as just a phase, it was fine with me. But at school, she told them something different. She was now a boy named Draco with male pronouns. Sage asked the school not to tell me, and they did not tell me, even though I informed them of her mental health history and medication. If I had known, this would be a much different story. She was terribly bullied. No one told me, but boys followed her, touched her, threatened violence and rape. Something happened in the boys' bathroom, but for 2 days, the school told me nothing. They kept meeting with Sage alone, and she became so distraught, they called me to pick her up. That evening, I found a hall pass labeled Draco, and Sage told me she was identifying as a boy, and that her counselor said she could use the boys' bathroom. She'd been jacked up against the wall by a group of boys. She was crying, terrified. I said, just stay home, we'll figure it out. That was my last conversation with Sage for 5 months. The night she ran, she thought to a young friend she'd met online. She left a note saying she was scared of what would happen if she stayed. The sheriff, FBI, search dogs were called in. I dropped to my knees in prayer. 9 days later, the FBI found her in Baltimore. My baby had been lured online, sex trafficked by DC, then Maryland. She was locked in a room, drugged, gang raped, and brutalized by countless men. It was night. The FBI told us to pick her up in Maryland the next morning. We packed our cars with blankets and stuffed animals and arrived by 8 a.m. But we were told we couldn't see her and were summoned before Judge Robert Kershaw late that afternoon. They didn't even tell Sage that we came for her. We finally entered the courtroom, and Sage appears on a huge Zoom screen from a prison cell. She looks tiny and broken, and I cry out, "I love you, Sage." Sage responds, "I love you too, Nana." But attorney Anissa Khan rebukes us. She is a he, and his name is Draco, not Sage. We were floored. What? Khan accuses us of emotional and physical abuse, that we are misgendering her. Even though we just learned she claims to be trans and we're willing to use any name and pronouns to bring her home. My husband was so tearful he kept forgetting the new pronouns, so the judge had the bailiff remove him from the courtroom. I was pleading for my child to be returned and treated for her unspeakable trauma. Judge Kershaw told me if I used the word trauma again, he would throw me out too. For over 2 months, he withheld custody. He housed Sage in a male quarters of a children's home. Sage told me she was the only girl and repeatedly assaulted. She was given street drugs by the other kids, and Khan told her she didn't care. She just wanted to win the case and all the way to Supreme Court if necessary. Khan tried to prove abuse, but we were eventually cleared by both states of all charges. Sage later told me Khan had told her to lie, that we hit her. Khan even had Sage's school counselors testify against us, though they barely knew Sage, and they didn't know us at all. Khan told my precious child I didn't want her anymore. I found out Sage never received any of the letters I sent her. Sage ran from the children's home and disappeared for months. They told me she might already be gone forever, but I couldn't give up, and I finally found a tip on her social media that led the marshals to her in Texas. She had been drugged, raped, beaten, and exploited. This time I was able to be with her for the traumatic rape exam and to bring her home. Back in Virginia, she entered the mental health facility that Judge Kershaw had ordered, as it would affirm her as a male. The therapist began pressuring her to have her healthy breasts removed. Sage was too scared to protest, but she asked me to secretly buy her girls' clothes because she wanted to be a girl, but keep them in the car. It took a kind lawyer, Josh Hetzler, to secure her discharge. After almost a year, Sage was finally home, safe, alive. Sage is receiving professional trauma care. The first trafficker has already been convicted. Sage has nightmares, panic attacks, rape-related medical issues, but there's hope. I told her she's not broken, she's just scarred. And part of that hope is that in courageously sharing her story, others will be saved. Sage said she doesn't know who she was back then. She wasn't a boy. She just wanted to have friends. But her school, the judge, the attorney, and the doctor were all blinded by their ideology. The consequences for Sage were unspeakable. Please don't let ideology harm another child. Let parents do our jobs. We know our children best, and we love them a million times more. Thank you.
Is that not one of the most horrendous, heartbreaking things you've ever heard? All of that together, from where those counselors came from, resistance, all of those things I went over. And then the last thing, this woman just inserting herself like she knew the law, which she didn't, and just taught all these young counselors and other counselors across the nation all of this information that was untrue. Sage's law pretty much would have required any school professional who reasonably suspects a student is at risk of suicide or is self-identifying as a gender different from the student's biological sex to contact at least one of the student's parents to notify the parent and to offer counseling. That doesn't seem like too much to ask. However, the Democrats killed this bill 9-6. Folks, this is the American school system. I know many of the people that defend these people, these families, these kids. These are very real stories. I know so many of them, and I wish I didn't. I wish this wasn't happening, but this is what's happening. And a lot of it has to do with the American School Counselor. So diversity, equity, and inclusion are not just social constructs. They're also weapons of mass instruction, using the color of kindness and empathy against our students and families. While administrators decry teaching DEI, culturally responsive teaching pedagogies activate the covertly established lessons. This is a common practice. Some teachers do this. More teachers than you realize do this, okay? Some don't, but more than you realize do this, and they will tell you they're not. So, do you think reverse racism is real? I'm gonna let you hear from this expert. This is in one of the videos that I got through Open Record Research. See what you think about this. I just want you to get a lot of samples of this so you'll know this is real stuff in the schools. It'll work. Here we go.
Racism is a little complicated, but the simple answer is no, it is not real. Although all of us have the ability to be prejudiced and discriminate against others, not all of us can turn that prejudice into laws, policies, and social practices. In the United States, white people have historically controlled our systems and institutions and race relations. Think of it this way. Are there any laws or policies that have been created and passed by non-white people that discriminated against white people, either on purpose or on accident? No. So until white people have been systematically marginalized through slavery, racial terrorism, Jim Crow, and other attempts to stop them from voting and other practices, I cannot say reverse racism is real. What's the difference between prejudice and racism? That's an important question and an important distinction. Prejudice is, which we all are capable of being prejudiced, is simply prejudging or making judgments about someone or something with very limited information. On the other hand, racism is a system of advantage based on race. So the difference between racism and prejudice can be thought of this way. You can be prejudiced against people, say, with an accent. But unless you have the power to pass laws or policies on how those people are treated, then you're not really being racist. Again, the thing that's really important about racism is understanding that it's about power and how folks can use power to shape the conditions for other people.
So there's one of your DEI lessons right there. And so people are thinking these things aren't taught. Well, it just depends on which video your child is assigned and how they are answering questions. Many times, maybe it's an algorithm, or maybe it's a customized lesson by a counselor, or possibly by a teacher that is in line with the counselors. It's different in every school district. So the digital mass destruction of the family worldview is what's taking place. I represent the family worldview. That's what Parents on the Level is laser focused on. And that's why you'll hear from me saying, you know, you've got to determine, parents, what is your worldview? How do you guard it? How do you instill it in your child? Especially so your child won't be manipulated like the little girl in South Carolina was. I mean, we've got to consider, how do we prepare our students for this? Because I'm going to say something. There's a lot of adults that don't know how to defend their faith. So parents, if you think your child isn't able to defend theirs, you might want to rethink your education plans for your children. Watch this. This is in Ohio.
We have the compelling argument that we need the whole child. I think it is our time to really capitalize on it.
We actually do have evidence now. We did not have it 15 years ago. I mean, to be fair, we were in the R&D phase in the field of social and emotional learning. We're not in that phase anymore. Content is more and more of a commodity. Children own what they want now at very young ages. They will become self-directed. They can find out the dates of the Civil War without learning it from a teacher. So the question that they're bringing to school is, who am I? How do I work with you? How do we build a team? What is our purpose? Where do I fit? That nurture children to believe that it's worth learning.
You know, I want children to believe that learning is worthwhile. Everybody does, right? So, the kind thing to do is to promote truth in our learning, though, right? What he just said is that, kids can be self-directed. They can go and learn what they want to know. We don't have to lead them. And you'll hear a lot of strategies in the schools about student-led learning. Yeah. And they want them to be lifelong learners instead of critical thinkers. Critical thinkers are what we want to make. We want them to understand and evaluate things, to say, that's true and this is not true, and discern how things are working in this world. This whole child approach, and you can look up the whole child educational strategies and determine what you think about it yourself, parents, because they want to take your role in everything, to where possibly you would just be the one that would tuck them in bed at night and they would feed them all their meals and do all of their education and or tell you they're educating them, but possibly they're not being educated at all. They're just being indoctrinated. So this can vary by school district, but I would fathom to say this is in most schools. Actually, I know it's in most schools because it comes in a lot of different formats. So anyway, Tim Shriver, the man that really he came across with a very caring tone, and they bring this in such a way that makes, schools want to sign on the line and say, yeah, I get it. These kids have real needs because their needs are real, and many of them are heartbreaking. And so there's a way you can sell this, because the nuclear family has been under attack by this nation for years. And our nation, it's off the rails right now as far as morality and ethics go. And so they see this as a way to teach morality and ethics. However, we see how it can be manipulated quite easily too. Tim Shriver is a globalist. He's a Kennedy. Eunice Kennedy is his mother. And so, yeah, we'll drill into that a little bit more too. And also in my Castle series, which is where social and emotional learning was pretty much, formed in strength to have it sent out to the masses, you'll learn more and more about this organization as we go as well. So anyway, yeah, he is the chair of Castle. So the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning is what Castle stands for. But when it first started in its first books, and I have a copy of it, it didn't say academic, it said advancing social and emotional learning. And they call it the missing piece in education. And we say that too. It's promoting something that it's the missing piece in our schools right now. We just spell it differently, right? We spell peace differently because this was never about academics. This is about how to indoctrinate kids across the board. So, you see my logo in the background, the Parents on the Level logo, that represents the family worldview, and it's being overtaken by Castle, which is the worldview of the school. By the time I get done with this, I'm going to show you how it's promoted as a religion, even in the schools. They're going to talk to your kids about a totally different way of thinking. And, we're going to look at all of these trans educational methods, gender identity, sexual orientation, whiteness, your parents don't understand you, and America was never good. Teaching in a way that has never been taught before or allowed before until administrations have come in and brought this in under the wire over the years. When it was said that some of our leaders wanted to fundamentally change America, this is what they were talking about. When you've heard these terms of what can be unburdened by what has been, this is what they're talking about. A whole new way of thinking, a whole new realm of thinking. And this is what they're teaching in our colleges. There's so many things to talk about in this, but we got to keep going. So anyway, this is their mindsets. All right. So you also have to understand about how this is impacting kids as far as transgendering kids goes. We all know that this has been a social contagion and that kids more than ever have been evolving into these transgender kids. Okay. So you see all these numbers here. And they're measuring it against people of color and all of these different groups and everything. This is divide and conquer. This is Marxist ways. These are Marxist ways of dividing us and keeping us stirred up with agitating propaganda, or agitprop is what some people would call it. So I'm going to compare really fast. I'm just going to read them because I think you're smart people and you understand the difference between your family and the school's doctrine. So the Castle doctrine for the average citizen, we think of that as a Second Amendment thing, which I want to use that kind of as an illustrative way of saying your castle, your home doctrine, okay? Your family worldview. Ours would be more in line with stand your ground. Theirs would be surrender to inclusion. Our identity found in Imago Dei. The average, many Americans identify as Christians or whatever your worldview is. Theirs would promote identities, and there are lessons about identity in a lot of these SEL programs. Identity is manipulated in global DEI, which I find interesting that it's spelled the same way as Latin for God, day. We believe as Christians in creation, whereas evolution is on the plan for the schools, and it has been for quite some time. And letting that stay there, which you cannot prove evolution either. Okay, so we'll just anyway. I'm not getting into that. Diverse realities. We believe in reality. Diversity is a reality, right? But divisive concepts would be on target for the Castle doctrine for the schools. Equal liberties versus equitable control. They've got to control everything. You're going to have a DEI coordinator or a DEI officer or a Title IX officer. All of these people that are in the schools manipulating and analyzing your kids. We believe in gifted and trained individuals, right? Guilted or shamed maybe would be what the terms would be used on the other, because you have two parents, or because you're a particular color, or because you had an opportunity someone else didn't have is the reason you're gifted or whatever. We also value hard work. Children also are valued in the home worldview, whereas in the school, it would be more of the system being valued. Okay. One more page of this. We value the individual. The school is going to promote the collective. We promote uniting, and we're law-abiding, dismantling and lawlessness. Wait till you see the Castle Pledge that I'm going to show you. Remember this. We promote moral absolutes. They promote moral relativism. We believe in abstinence, waiting for marriage. Many Christians, this is how we teach our students, because we believe that this is something that has to do with our religious freedoms, our sacred values, and the fundamental rights of parents to raise their children the way they see fit. These are basic constitutional rights of the American citizen as well. We believe in American citizenship, and they believe in global citizenship. They learn emotionally with feelings. And when I was talking about abstinence, at the school, if you abstain, they're going to brand you as asexual or questioning so they can put you in the LGBTQ community. It's the true story. So these kinds of things happen depending on the teacher and how they would promote things. So this is SEL. So the definition of SEL, according to Castle, my letters went a little crazy up here for some reason, but social and emotional learning, SEL, is an integral part of education and human development. And SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. Okay, that is how Castle defines what they're doing, what they're promoting, what they're measuring through data on your kid in the American school system happening across the board. So the 15 harmful elements of social and emotional learning, we're going to zip through these real quick. All right. First of all, all of the harmful elements of comprehensive sex education may be present in social and emotional learning programs. If you go to Family Watch International or stopcse.org, you can find out a lot more about comprehensive sex education. That would be called by the average person more of the radical sex education. In order to teach DEI in the schools, comprehensive sex ed would need to be promoted. And there is a term called SOGI. This acronym stands for Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity Ideology. And it must be present in order to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, because one of the diverse, marginalized communities that they are going to teach about in the schools is your LGBTQ community. So in order to do that, they teach about sex education, and they use inclusive language, things like that. And you can learn more about that in my Castle series as well. And I have all kind of other webinars that you can learn about these things as well on parentsonthelevel.com/webinars. All right, so here's a lot of the different concepts that are taught in that you would find the 15 harmful elements of comprehensive sex ed. You can just look over those really quick here as we're discussing this. And I want to show you that sexually responsive teaching is pretty much what's going on with this type of education when you're teaching sex ed. So pretty much comprehensive sex education comes in, and it's taught, they say the earlier the better is the CSE, and I call it pedagogy because it's more of a grooming way of teaching sex education. So when you're talking about teaching kids how to use condoms, they can have sex whenever they want, like there's no repercussions emotionally, spiritually, physically, legally, there can be repercussions from teenage sex. There's so much that can happen to kids when they open the door to sexuality prematurely. And we all know it. That's the reason why we guard our kids from pervs on the internet, right? So anyway, all right, here's the next one. You can compare sex education using this chart. CSE is going to really promote, their philosophy is that teens are going to have sex anyway. So teen sex is normalized, and it's the expectation for these people. They're like, when we were kids, we all did it, blah, blah, blah. But, we didn't do it the way that it's wide open today to do it with anyone, with groups of people in the bathrooms at school as a dare. Folks, we've heard of the horrors going on in these schools. I mean, you just heard about Sage's Law. That started out happening in a bathroom. I know of several bathroom situations, Loudoun County, Virginia, Clay County, Florida. There's been all kinds of these situations, okay? So I can talk for days about this. So anyway, sexual risk reduction is another way to say CSE for comprehensive sexuality education. It gets convoluted and it gets more deeper and deeper because they keep trying to market it in different ways. Abstinence and SRA, or sexual risk avoidance education. This is what I did in a crisis pregnancy center. I've taught in Pennsylvania. And then later on, when I moved to South Georgia, I tried to teach it, and they told me they were using social and emotional learning to teach sex ed. So don't think that your sex ed class and health is all you need to opt your kid out of. So there's forms on my website as well to help you understand that you can opt your children out of sex ed altogether through SEL. But SEL, it's integrated throughout the day. You never know when one of these discussions is going to pop up. And if another kid introduces it, there's not much that a teacher can do to keep your child from hearing it anyway. So there you go. All right, so the message is mixed with comprehensive sex ed. Either abstinence or protected sex are equally good. So they give a mixed message about it. They say sex when you're ready is what they encourage. I have got on a Rumble channel with a lot of different videos. If you put in Parents on the Level for my Rumble channel with no spaces, you can see all kind of videos that I've collected over the years with this kind of stuff. They're going to promote contraceptive use as the primary message. their curriculum spends less than 5% of page content on risk avoidance and 6 times more content promoting contraception. So contraceptive information is medically inaccurate in the way that it's said. I've heard one of them saying that condoms are 99% effective. Not all of them say that. There's some that have really good information. I'm not going to act like they don't give any medical information that's correct, but you can find good CSE teachers that, as far as medical accuracy goes, you can find good abstinence teachers as far as medical accuracy goes as well. And you can also find people that do a poor job on either side. So everything always depends on what teacher is in front of you, and are they certified, and do they have any business being in your school in the first place? I am personally a proponent that says, don't let your kids learn sex ed in schools, period. And if we could get it out of the schools, the better off we would be. Parents, though, you need to do your job in teaching your kids about sex education. And if you don't know how to teach it medically, find someone like me that can teach it to you. So you will learn this, and you can go to weascend.org and you can learn all kind of stuff about sex education for your area. And you can be one of the people that teaches it to parents there. So if you really feel strongly about it, learn about this. But these are great tools that you can use. We believe in eliminating risk in the abstinence category. Planned Parenthood has done a number on the abstinence efforts by crisis pregnancy centers, saying that they never teach anything right, that they're always inaccurate, that they're fake clinics, all this stuff. And it's not true. Just like you've got, I mean, you can have uninformed people on either side of this. Of course, we're all human and make mistakes. But the thing is, for them to say this totally against these centers, it's inappropriate. So learn about this, because I would much rather see my kids avoid having sex in a premature way than I would to see them toying with it in this day and age, the way the CSE proponents make this out to be. So there you go. All right. The second one, they promote data collection in SEL programs. So back to that. That is absolutely crazy. If you go to this particular ceds.ed.gov, take a little screenshot of that real quick. If you go to this particular website and you see this tab right here, it says data model. If you go to that, you will come to this screen, okay? And you can click all of these different files and you can see all the information that they are collecting on your family. So let that sink in. This is one of many programs that they could be using. And then on top of that, they could be collecting it in a way that it has interoperability, where it can speak globally to any other computer systems that are given the right to access it by your school with your family's information. And a lot of these things have data leaks. A lot of these things have been attacked. And there's your family's life right out there on the internet for everyone to see. All right. Number 3, impersonates mental health services. Folks, this is insane how this happens. Teachers are teachers. They're not mental health professionals. So a lot of them are designed to shape the child's developing brain to accept particular worldviews regarding sex, racial attitudes, other social issues that they simply aren't ready for. And many of these kids, if they weren't taught these things, they would not be so depressed and possibly suicidal in the first place. SEL plants seeds, and it is so dangerous to plant these seeds in many kids' lives. So there are pending lawsuits on several things that have to do with these different things. If I have a stamp on here that says pending lawsuit, it's because I know of one that involves this particular danger, okay? All right, so also psychological evaluations by unqualified teachers are happening. Interventions may be prescribed by a teacher with limited training that may adversely impact a student's permanent data file. The number of trained counselors are limited in most schools. What is that ratio counselor to student? If that ratio is like 2 counselors to 1,500 students, do you think they could do an adequate job when they start digging around in your kid's mind and in their data about these personal? I mean, I've seen personal questions asked to these students, like, who do you find romantically attractive? I can show you that lesson. There's all kinds of things like that being asked of our students. So let's look at this. I've got a video here. I want you to look at this and tell me how appropriate you think it is for this woman to discuss this business in front of a full classroom. And notice how she talks about the brain.
I have a young girl in my classroom 2 days in this month. She has come crying. She was walking like this. She was trying to get past me and she had her head down with her hair in front of her face so I couldn't see her. And I'm like, wait a minute, come here. What is wrong? And then she was like, eyes all wet and stuff. What is going on? My stepfather and my mom is breaking up. And she said, my mom told me it's all my fault.
I took her anger out on me. Her and my stepdad were getting into fights. She took her in that me and she really said some really hurtful things, which I don't know what they was at the end of the day.
It is not your fault. That's grown-up stuff. It don't have nothing to do with you. She told me, Miss Bryant, I need to go to the safe place. And I said, okay, you can go to the safe place. Although you go to the safe place, you still have your work that you need to do. She needs to go home and use her voice to tell her mom how she's feeling.
Yeah, he was good.
So what about this time? What happened Monday?
When I had a couple of her again, she just stepped down and then he speak and I interrupted like the other time.
Yeah. So she realized that whatever problems she have is not your problem, right? That's grown up problem. Remember we was talking about the rule of 3 and the parts of the brain? What part of the brain your mom is really at right now? She's in the emotional state because that's a big jump going from having a 2-parent hold to a 1-parent hold and having to have to be the main provider. With conscious discipline, they are able to take responsibility for that and they're able to look at someone else, use their big voice, and even with me, I'm using it in my everyday life, everyday life, because it could be a time back in the day where I would just snap like that. And I'm able to stop, take a deep breath, and really look at that person and wonder what is actually going on in that person's life. And just wish that person well without me even opening my mouth. Trust me, I do use it at home.
So this program, Conscious Discipline, you can go to consciousdiscipline.com. You can go to their YouTube channel and you can get in a lot of these different videos. And, this teacher, I think she really does love her kids. So don't get me wrong. There's a need for comforting students when they come in. I mean, for the mom to do that, but for her to talk about that in front of the other students and to make a commercial out of this, I mean, it just, this shows you how they're using the brain, teaching the kids this information. I don't know. I feel that this is probably something that is best taught in a way that is in a counseling situation that's not right there in front of the whole class. So that might be an opinion. Maybe you feel the same way, but to me, this is just, I mean, these kids in the background, what's going on with their education? What are we? Is this a mental hospital or a school? So you get what I'm saying. All right. So
I have a young girl in my classroom today.
All right. Next one, 5. Also, SEL programs, one of the dangerous elements is that it involves problematic privacy policies. A lot of the time you will have the privacy policies listed on these SEL programs and any of these digital programs, and they will say that they will open up their records for law enforcement if they feel that it's needed in the best interest of their user. Now, I've seen this, and this could be, when you saw where Sage was taken away from the parents there, if they think that because you're not providing that affirmation for that child to transgender, they would say that that would be a reason to get law enforcement involved, and that could interrupt your home. So a family disruption or separation could happen in that case. So that's what this is pretty much saying. This is Edgenuity saying, if we believe in good faith, that the disclosure is necessary to protect the rights, property, or personal safety of our users. So let that sink in for a minute. By the way, Edgenuity now is Imagine Learning. Like I told you before, they repackage constantly, these companies do. And then also they subscribe to an interoperable service of data collection from the Gates Foundation called Project Unicorn. And interoperability simply means that the computers are they're opened up to where other networks can get and extract all the information out of them, that, like I showed you on that earlier data collection one. Yeah. So parents have no idea this stuff's going on. So also it's the Dell Foundation along with Bill and Melinda Gates. I just wanted to show you that this is what Project Unicorn is about. So you can go to projectunicorn.org and you can read all about. Sometimes if you have subscriptions to this service, the second your kid pushes the button enter, it's in the global networks for whoever they want to allow to look at it, to see it. So basically you could find out where a kid is, what they're doing, traffic them, whatever you want to do. This is where we are today. Phones will do this too. I mean, we all know this, but in this technical world, we have to be aware. So it's all about the data and assessing all of this stuff and to find out, is this child transformed with our social and emotional learning platform? So let's look at that for a minute. So all these assessments that they're doing, this particular slide came from the Castle website to defend SEL because they were being attacked and pushed back with so badly at first. So I have put all of the red writing on there because I'm kind of breaking it down for you, showing what's happening at each stage, okay? So you see my little beacon there that says introductory, the self-awareness, understanding one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior across contexts. Okay, so we've introduced a diverse topic. So this is more of a mental health, therapeutic education going on here. And every topic will go through all 5 of these competencies. So at the next step, after introductory, we're going to have a conversion step. Self-management, cognitively, they're thinking. At first, they're identifying, what do they believe about it? What frames would I believe about it? That was in step 1. So it's introducing an idea or a concept. Converting the thoughts, possibly converting those thoughts, managing one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations to achieve goals and aspirations. Okay. So we're learning to manage and make choices, right? We can convert at this point pretty easily. This is a child we're talking about. So then to replace any of those values that were instilled before, that the educator might be looking to transition, like the little girl in South Carolina was. The social awareness, understand the perspectives of and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds. So if we bring in someone of a diverse or marginalized background that may be classified that way because it is totally a separate way of living from your own sacred beliefs or your family's choices, these things are introduced to your child to give them another perspective that might turn them from your family's way of thinking and can break up the peace in your family. So this is the missing piece in education at work here. Remember how Justice Sotomayor had said they're using peer pressure? Well, this is the pressure cooker, because when we bring in these diverse situations, things that are moral to you can look unkind when someone says, no, my family has taught me, my church has taught me, this is not right, or I don't believe this is right. If you're in a group setting, peer pressure is happening. Do you think your child might just internalize that a little bit and maybe get worn down? Some people even call this like a struggle session. So there you go. Relationship skills: establish and maintain healthy, supportive relationships and effectively navigate settings with diverse individuals and groups. In other words, start thinking like them. Transition, social awareness, fit in, get with the program. There you go. Responsible decision making, making caring and constructive choices. Look, you're resisting us. Get with the program. Let everybody get along here. Be kind. Who cares what their pronouns are? Just use them. There you go. So every topic goes through these competencies until thoughts are transformed using diverse morals. You got it? So we've got culturally responsive teaching. Another way of saying CRT, culturally responsive teaching, is going on and introducing marginalized people, marginalized topics, whatever it is, to transform the thought processes of the kids away from the family norms. All right? Watch this and you'll see what I'm talking about.
How can I create a culture of respect and safety for those deciding to come out? Coming out is a process. There are 10 million Americans who are openly a part of the LGBTQ community, and each of them have their own story. Personally speaking, I had a dad who was very homophobic, and so he was very mentally and emotionally abusive towards me. And I let his ideologies and his opinion dictate how I would then conduct myself. And so I was very fearful to come out, and I was fine with staying in the closet simply because I thought that everyone would judge me. And so when I was 17 years old, my sister actually outed me to my family. After telling me that I could trust her and that she wouldn't tell anyone, she actually ended up telling my entire family. But still to this day, I would never take it back or have anything be different because I'm so appreciative. It took for her to push me like that for me to learn to become myself that much faster and be myself that much better. And I was so surprised because when I came out finally to my peers in high school, everyone received me with open arms. And it just was so funny to me because, you know, my fear of coming out was that everyone would treat me differently. And it was the complete opposite. People really respected me. People really admired me for being able to be myself. And so for those who are struggling with coming out, first I want to say to you guys, it's okay. It is okay. You may feel alone. It may be times when you are alone, but trust that I care. There are millions of people in the world who care. So if you are watching this and you are contemplating coming out, when the time is right, it will happen. For those who don't have this particular struggle, ways in which you can support someone that's trying to come out is being compassionate. You never know someone's story. You can really negatively impact someone by judging them or by trying to bully them or make them feel some type of way about them being them. So I say be compassionate, be understanding, and be open. Now's the time to really learn how to deal with people who are different than you so that when you are older and an adult in the real world, you'll be able to understand people that much better. But I just want to challenge you guys with one thing. If you know anyone in your school that's coming out, if you know anyone that may be battling it, I would like for you guys to go up to them and let them know how proud you are of them, for them being themselves, how proud you are of them, for them even opening up to allow their true self to shine through. I challenge you guys to do that.
So you see what I'm talking about. This pretty much puts kids, imagine your child in a group after watching this video. Imagine the group work that goes along with this. Okay. Now, this man's name is Elijah Proge. He's one of the teachers there. You can look on the Purpose Prep. Actually, it's under Imagine Learning now, Imagine Purpose. And you can look on there and you can see him. I've got pictures of this man. I'm sure he's a nice person. I don't want to be, belittle him, but he is either non-binary or trans, one of the two. I mean, he is dressed in full drag on one of his pictures on their website and with his fake eyelashes and all of this. And this looks very different for a kid, and especially the topic that he's speaking to. So, how is your child going to maintain themselves if you have sacred beliefs against this kind of behavior? This is the American school system. This is what's being allowed. Castle 5 competencies will measure these classes and to see if the child is converting. Remember, you go all the way down to responsible decision making. Be kind, right? Be sure to catch my Castle series. It's a 3-part series, but it talks more in depth about this information. All right, SEL, it is a belief system or worldview, and this might sound crazy because it is, but it has occult origins. Now, when castle.org started, they had a completely different history, and it's on the Wayback Machine. So you can see the link here below the number 6 here. Yeah, and pretty much they have their old history talks about how this was developed in the Fetzer Institute. John Fetzer, he was, I think, the owner of the Detroit Tigers, but he was also known as a New Age activist, taught New Age religious values. They have the institute there and everything. So you can look all of that up if you want to. And yeah, that's where this whole SEL deal was formed, a whole committee of people together at the Fetzer Institute. So you can look into that and his connections with Alice Bailey and all of it. It's a long trail to go through. So if you want to look at it, you certainly can. But then also you need to also understand that Timothy Shriver, who we showed you earlier, he is connected with this organization as well. He's their keynote many times, spiritualityandeducation.org, because pretty much they absolutely are down for making this the next addition to the education system. So after everyone said separation of church and state and all this for so many years, claiming it's in the Constitution, which it's not, they're going to go and promote this, but it's not Christianity. I can assure you that. So the former history, I have this all on the archive saved for you. And once I post this particular video that you're seeing here, you'll be able to regain access to it at the parentsonthelevel.com webinar page on my website. So you can always come back to this. But yeah, this is where the former history was. Now, today's history is different. We got to have some revisionist history even in our own SEL programs, right? So you need to look, the very last part of that on their old history. I want you to read this one thing. It says, schools were being inundated with a slew of positive youth development programs such as drug prevention, violence prevention, sex ed, civic education, moral education, to name a few. SEL was introduced as a framework that addresses the needs of young people and helps align and coordinate school programs and programming. But they wanted to have a global agenda with it, so they forgot that part on there. So folks, their emergency to come together and make this amazing tool for the schools was all because there's all these non-academic programs in the school, and they wanted to be able to knit them together and put them all throughout the school day and teach morals themselves. This is where indoctrination comes from. So it's spiritually, mentally, and emotionally abusive. Just think about this for a minute. If you're teaching your child one thing at home, and then a teacher at school or a lesson, a video lesson, whichever it is teaching something totally different, and your child has to flesh these things out, who to follow. I know I've got to make a grade. My parents send me to school and I'm supposed to make good grades. And there's a little bit of a pressure there, a tension there. Which do I do? That is something that is very abusive emotionally to a child. And we really don't want our kids in this kind of a stress. When you distress students like this, and they're left on their own, and they don't want to tell their parents for fear that the parent's going to come down to the school, this puts a child in a psychological term, what's called a double bind. And so that's where we're calling it out as mentally and emotionally abusive. And then it's also spiritually abusive because it is coming against the spiritual beliefs of that family worldview. All right. It also requires that students accept false concepts. We've already talked about this earlier. So, if you're going to compel their speech for pronouns, you heard that counselor discussing all of that as well. However, you're going to do that. I mean, there's lawsuits against this right now. So we would call that a false concept, saying that there's only two genders when a child is pretty much beaten down in their thought processes on that. That's false. And so we stand against that, and there are constitutional rights attached. So the more lawsuits that are filed in this regard, the better. And it systemically undermines established protocols and laws. So in most states, you have to follow very specific laws when you establish sex education classes. They're circumventing those with SEL. They're going ahead and putting them in the video programs, just like I showed you, where that man was teaching students how to come out as homosexuals. So you've got to look at all of that as well. So moral education is something that shouldn't really be taught in a public school system at all. And as far as the way that they're teaching sexuality and things of that nature, I'm sure you understand. So yeah, it systemically, as they like the word, undermines what we've established to protect our students from things that most parents want to have a lot of say and want to have some, input. And so pretty much parents, you are disrespected and disregarded with these kinds of systems. Number 10. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not at 10 yet. Let me explain this to you too. The updated Castle website happened in September of 21, okay? So remember I told you before about how they had everything talking about the Fetzer Institute and all of that. They started getting some pushback from people like me. So then later on, they come out with James P. Comer. Now, James P. Comer, he was not listed on there at all before. And all of a sudden, he is given all of these accolades that this whole child theory, all of this came from him. You can come back and read that later on my website. But pretty much, as I just kind of put this in a nutshell for you, is this particular man, when he started back in 1968 working in this particular school, they're trying to say that this is what gave them the idea for social and emotional learning as a framework of bringing all these things together. Timothy Shriver, of course, was right there with him, and another man, Roger Weisberg. He's deceased since then. So anyway, lots of this information you need to just read on yourself, because I can only make this video for so long. So there was previously, here's the old history, no mention at all about James P. Comer. But there's more. There's always more. This is James P. Comer. Isn't he adorable? He looks like a sweet little granddaddy. 47 honorary degrees. He just turned 90 this year, folks, okay? And look at all of where he's been educated. He started out he's gone all the way up as a psychiatric fellow with Hillcrest Children's Center. He has Yale University, Howard University. But his undergrad is what interests me the most, because when he went to college, there was something very popular happening across the nation, actually across the world. And that had to do with Alfred Kinsey, folks. Alfred Kinsey was over the zoology department there, 1956. He is best known for his book that he wrote, Sexuality and the Human Male. And that came out, and he became the most foreknown sex expert. And so some people compare his efforts there to what Freud gave psychology. Okay. So anyhow, it's very interesting, though, that he was attracted to go to Indiana University and ends up having this particular position with Castle later on. It's just very interesting, because sex education is where the foothold came in on these schools years ago in order to get in the door as a non-academic educational lesson where experts from Planned Parenthood or crisis pregnancy centers, they've been going at it for years to try to get in the schools and to get that microphone for your kids. So I just find it very interesting that this is where he was educated. This man, too, he defies all of their narrative about racism. I mean, for him to come over the years and be able to come all the way up through Yale and to have 47 honorary degrees. Is America really that racist, y'all? I mean, really? I mean, racism is always going to exist, but that's because of personal issues. And sometimes I get it. I do get it. There are some systemic things that happen. And I do understand that there are books that had more white kids in it than black kids. I understand that too. And I understand a lot, but I think a lot of people are waking up that this is a conversation that is best kept in the company of adults than it is to bring all of this into play with small children and immature teenagers as well, and to not make them feel pitted against one another and not to manipulate their thinking that America is bad. You go to another country. I've been in Ecuador. I've seen what is bad. I've seen how these kids have grown up. But I'm going to tell you something. This right now, this awareness in this, and not just making it about, well, Marsha, you know how there were slaves in the past and all that. I get that. But zoom out and look at what's happening in the schools and how these kids are being divided. They're not mature enough. They're not able to handle these conversations. And this kind of information is where I'm going with this, because it all depends on what teacher is standing there in front of those kids, how they're allowing the conversation to build. So these are the things, when you look at how you're going to introduce all of these divisive concepts in the schools, you're calling them diverse. No, we're going to call them divisive. It all depends on how it's brought to the kids. And when the parents aren't able to speak into it, well, that's another thing altogether. So anyway, the Kinsey Institute, though, let's zoom back in on that, because I want you to know just how horrific this book truly was. Folks, this is the famous Table 34. Google it. Table 34, Alfred Kinsey. You will find this chart, and there's the age of children and the number of orgasms they had. A 5-month child here had 3 orgasms, is what it's saying. They don't have the time involved. Let's go down to another one. An 11-month child had 10 orgasms in an hour, is what this chart is saying. How would they know that a child could do that? That child was molested. These children were molested to get these numbers. The comprehensive sex education teachers and Planned Parenthood, they believe that children are sexual from birth, excuse me. And what they will do is, if you look at the Amaze videos, you will see how they will talk to kids on the younger videos that are targeted for them. If you believe a child is sexual from birth and you start just desensitizing them to sex, do you think any learning about the classics or deeper learning about physics or math or reading things that actually build character in them are going to happen? No. They're going to be more inclined to look for those things. Sexualized children are controllable children many times because you can just feed them whatever you want. So yeah, these are true things. This is his book, and this is what a lot of the sex industry comes from. Hugh Hefner declared that he was going to be Alfred Kinsey's pamphleteer, and that he certainly was, right? Look at the pornography situation we're in. Think of Pornhub and what all it's doing to our planet. Yeah, it's all over the world now, and that's from America. So there you go. All right. So there it is, 1956. This is his Yale website. So James Comer, there it is for you. That's where he was. So just wanted to prove that to you. All right. He also is involved with the Teachers College, Columbia University. He's on the trustees board. Now, the Columbia University, you can learn more about how they play in the world of SEL and in the world of indoctrinating students across the globe. Go to my Castle series and you can learn a lot more about it. So the fact that he's connected to that does not surprise me at all. And also, he's connected to a lot of other people as well. He is known as the father of SEL, they say. And here he is getting his little award from Hillary Clinton. So there you go. Linda Darling Hammond, also deeply connected with Castle and forming it. She was Bill Ayer's pick for the Secretary of Education, but she was really assigned something more important. She was the transitional coordinator for Obama and the Biden administrations. She was one of the people that really helped to build the network and framework of social and emotional learning for it to take hold during the COVID year. So, yeah, this was planned for quite some time, in my opinion. She now is also the president of the state of California school board. So, California. Yeah, there you go. You can learn more about her. She's also over the Learning Policy Institute. She teaches the teachers all of this stuff. So she teaches them how to do SEL, how to introduce diverse topics, all of the like. She's all in it and through it. And yeah, just read about her. Probably one of the most dangerous people in the school systems. They also prevent meaningful regulation or surveillance. There's no way that there's no laws that keep these videos and lessons from being updated constantly. So these are unsecured lessons that can change at any time. A teacher may have watched this and then a week later it might be different and she not realize that it has these things in it. Who knows how it's working? Nobody's regulating it. How would you know? So just use your mind to think about what they could do with this. So there you go. Also, revisionist lessons, the history lessons in this stuff. Oh my goodness. You could well imagine. So revisionist lessons, you can change it. There's also, Castle promotes itself as the lever for equity and social justice. So they will use, it's a divide and conquer world in SEL using diverse measures. Divide and conquer, divide and conquer. Stir it up, stir it up, stir it up. That's SEL. Schools are heavily funded with targeted grants. My goodness, are they targeted with these grants? And you can follow the money and you will find out more than even I know. So there you go. Abundant funding. They want this in there and they'll keep financing it and they'll repackage it in different ways. There's plenty of evidence out there if you really start looking into it. Founded and financed by globalists, Castle's website reveals its corporate and foundational connections. Let's just look at them. There you go. Follow that money, everybody. There you go. Zuckerberg, Facebook, Gates Foundation, Fetzer Institute, of course, Novo, Warren Buffett, Patrick McGovern. Y'all be looking for artificial intelligence and how it's going to be impacting your schools. Yeah. Are your teachers going to still be there? Or are we going to have facilitators? How's that going to work? Kellogg's. Yeah, all kind of stuff. Robert Wood Johnson. Lots of different people here. So yeah, screenshot that one. Yep. All right. Promotes activism, allegiance, and division. We're almost done, folks. We are almost to the end here, and hopefully I can keep my voice on track. Critical theory and Marxist lessons are taught regarding oppression, oppressors, intersectionality, race, gender, and religion in ways that promote illegal sectarian concepts. Community organizing events and after-school programs are routinely promoted, and Castle is committed to the morally bankrupt woke doctrine of radical progressives. So you might say, dang, Marsha, are you really going to say it like that? Yeah, I'm going to say it like that. Watch. This is their pledge I mentioned earlier. Let's read it together. I pledge to contribute to a caring, just, and thriving world by prioritizing social and emotional learning for myself and others. So I'm not going to just categorize it for me. I'm going to also make you do it, right? I will examine my own emotions, identities, beliefs, and biases to understand how they impact the way I interact with others. I will create spaces for others to explore their emotions, strengths, and assets, and how they can be channeled to serve the collective well-being. That is a communist term. I will listen to young people, elders, and those who are different from me. I will work to build meaningful relationships so that I can better understand others' perspectives, experiences, cultures, and stories. I will create inclusive environments where everyone feels a sense of belonging and where young people find purpose and passion. And then on to that enlarged part. I will work alongside others to identify and dismantle inequities. Don't you want your kid dismantling things? Stand up to injustice and use our collective voice and power to create spaces where everyone thrives. I will use my power, my privilege, my time, my work, my influence, my lived experience, my love, my passion, my energy, and my resolve. Because when we commit to social and emotional learning, we can build stronger schools and communities today and a more just and caring world tomorrow. Let that sink in a minute, people. What do you think? I mean, this is activism. This is training activists. Not everyone is going to believe and think the same. We all come from different walks of life. This is ideology. This is a doctrinal statement of Castle. You can't deny it. All right, next, the last one. Yay! You've made it. These systems require special knowledge to expose shielding strategies, and here's how you can fight back. Folks, I've been doing this for 4 years now, and I started teaching sex ed years before that. So I had an understanding of things that were going on in the schools. This is something that takes an investment of time. I mean, if you've invested an hour, hour and a half in listening to this today, you are pretty much ready to start diving in. And I invite you to do so because our children in this country depend on it. Even if you're able to get your children out of the schools and bring them home to educate them, which I absolutely, absolutely encourage you to do, even if it means selling your second vehicle to do it. Because your child, if you have any sacred values, they won't have them after they go through this. They'll be worn down by the time that, all is said and done. They'll be tired of feeling like an outcast. So, folks, learning this, believe me, I've done a lot of it for you. I have had to listen to, I can't tell you how many seminars, webinars, programs, fought for access codes, all of these things. You've got it right here. You've got it right here. You can use these slides in order to go out and teach this yourself. So, and you can also, I've got so much information on my website, on my Rumble channel. So you can use these things, or you can also do your own open record request. Now, one of the first open record requests that I talk with parents about getting is find out how many of these American School Counselors members are in your school district. Just send them that, ask them that, just ask them the question. How many American School Counselor members are in our school district? Start there. And I've got other information on my website that you can pull on the forms tab and learn, because the administrators, they will try to deter you and exhaust you from looking. They'll tell you you need the publisher's permission to review the curriculum, which is not true. They'll tell you that it's subject to review. That's all you need to do is tell them it's subject to review, just like a book. Just because it's on a computer doesn't mean that parents don't have access to use to look through this stuff. And if possible, show them your state laws. Find out what your state law says about this, parental rights and everything for reviewing curriculum. And then another thing, if a school uses the excuse of FERPA laws, just say, I'm not wanting to go in and see the answers of students. I want to see what you're asking them. FERPA laws don't apply to this. And if you're a parent, you can see what your kids say. FERPA doesn't, no. You demand to see what your kid's data looks like. And you need to understand, what are they asking your kid? So anyway, if they refuse access, keep pushing. Don't take no for an answer. Keep going. Keep going. And also carbon copy your attorney on any of these letters. Let them know you mean business. Copyright infringement, that's a big one they try to use on me. And I have to generally get an attorney to go through that to get through that part. But, it's worth it. And you make it part of the story. Copyright infringement is just another tactic. So also, they will try to give you this scope and sequence document in hopes that you will just take that. These are the lessons we're teaching and that you'll just stop there. Oh my gosh, those made me more curious when they did that one time. And I thought, you know what? These aren't the actual lessons. I want access to the lessons. So get ready to do that. Don't accept. That's just a fancier name for just a table of contents. Okay. So anyway, remember, this is a process. There's nothing instant in this. This is a process, and it can last a while. And then when you think you come to the end of it, they can reinvent something else. We're in a post-trust era with the American school system. Post-trust. Remember that. Because the fact that they would pay our taxpayer dollars to these publishers to do this to our children, I don't even trust them anymore. And the fact that they're selling their data and there's been data breaches, yeah, you need to check that out. You need to check it out. There are major lawsuits against ed tech people like Power School and all of that because of data breaches. So you need to check into that, make sure. All right. So download your resources at Parents on the Level. I have a Parents Level of Confidence plan. What level of confidence do you have in your school? By the time you ask these questions, believe me, it's not going to be that high. Opt-out letters. For some things you can opt out of. You cannot opt out of SEL. It's everywhere. It's transformed the whole school culture. You can also have, open record request examples. I also have the 15 harmful elements action document there for you to use. So it's parentsonthelevel.com, and you can always reach out and contact me, parentsonthelevel@gmail.com, if you have questions. Also, I have the parentnavigator.net if you want to look into the book that I've published on this information as well. And it covers a lot more than just SEL. It covers so much more. So you might want to look into that as well. But one thing at a time, you should be able to stay pretty busy just watching the webinars. And there are several. And even if that company might not be in your particular school district, watch those videos because it'll teach you how it works. So even if it's not your company, you'll learn how pretty much all of these companies work the same way. So this is Marsha Metzger, Parents on the Level, parentsonthelevel.com. Rumble is Parents on the Level, all together, no spaces. Look at my videos there. And also follow me with Protect Ohio Children. They do a great job at producing my webinars. So be sure to look those good people up. They have been a tremendous support of this ministry. And this is a ministry to parents. Parents, I'm pulling for you. Catch my weekly podcast, parentsonthelevel.com, at blueberry.com as well. And just stay in touch. We're in this together. Have a great day.